your glory, I will.
All right, so we are live. StreamYard, streaming on the World Wide Web via Facebook and YouTube on the StreamYard platform. We are Nazarene Holiness Center in picturesque, serene San Grande, East Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies, for the benefit of our friends joining us from across the region. Before we go further, let me invite those that are here in the sanctuary as I greet you, and those on the live stream, bow your heads as I invite our NMI Nazarene Missions International President, Brother Kern Dabro, to open us in prayer.
Hallelujah.
Can we stand, please, those that are here?
So bow our heads, close our eyes. Lord Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here this afternoon, yet another time, Lord. We thank you for all that are here already. We pray that all that are on their way to the sanctuary, may they reach here safe, Lord. Lord, we pray that this afternoon will be a successful one. All the things that we may discuss this afternoon will be well thought out and applied to our lives. May we know exactly what to do, Lord, when that time reaches. We thank you for your mercies, Lord, upon us. In your holy name.
Amen. 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 You may be seated. Those that are here, sit back and relax. This is a joint initiative between Nazarene Holiness Center and the Sangre Grande Development Foundation. In a little while, we'll hear from some remarks from their president. Let me invite the CEO and General Secretary of the Sangre Grande Development Foundation, Miss Kimel Kerr, to come and do a welcome, to welcome all of you wonderful people that will be joining us on the live stream, those that are here, those who are running late. Come on, put your hands together and welcome Ms. Kerr, CEO and General Secretary of the Sangre Grande Development Foundation. She will welcome you to this workshop. Thank you.
Pleasant good evening to everyone. On behalf of the Nazarene Holiness Center and the Sangre Grande Development Foundation, I extend a heartfelt welcome to all those who are live as well as on the different social media platforms. We welcome you and we thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much. Amen. So we are ready to roll. We know when disasters hit, they don't wait. They get going. We apologize for starting a bit late. Was just realigning some of the technical issues to ensure that all our facilitators, unfortunately, this afternoon, 2 of our facilitators have opted to present online. One because the car broke down on the way and couldn't get here, and the other one, well, both of them is car trouble. Yeah, one was waiting on his car from the mechanic. He didn't get it, and Mrs. Jennifer Messiah and the team from the Habitat for Humanity, whilst they were mobile, they encountered also some mechanical difficulties. They went back to the office and called to ask whether they would be able to stream. So we had to do some adjustments in terms of the platform that we were using. We were just supposed to be streaming via Facebook, YouTube. We had to switch to the StreamYard platform to incorporate both so that they can come on the live to share and have a good product. Let me greet all those, first of all, the president and his team of the Sangre Grande Development Foundation, Mr. Eric Taylor. And those of you on the live, you're not seeing him, but he's here with us and his team. Let's just welcome him. Let me just greet in the waiting room Mrs. Jennifer Messiah of Habitat for Humanity and her team. Come on, I'll greet them. We will hear from them in a while. Let's greet Fire Service Instructor Earl Horn, who will delve into the realm of medical emergencies that we may encounter during disasters. Give him some love. He is also in the waiting room. Counselor, I'm not sure if he'll be joining us tonight. Counselor for the Northeast area, Mr. Paul Mongolas. If he joins us, but we bring greetings from us here at Nazarene Holiness Center. And all of you that are on the live stream, I know our Caribbean field director, Dr. Rohan Harry from St. Vincent is on. Give us some love. I know she and her husband, Dr. Kel Harry, they would be with us and some persons. So we expect to have some folks from up the islands joining us on the live stream tonight. We welcome you if you're there already. And whatever part of the region you may be, right here in Trinidad, Nazarene Youth International. I know the young people, the youth department, they're logged on and they have promised to support this initiative to ensure that the young people understand that they are important too. So just give them some love, all the people who will join tonight, this wonderful presentation. So I want to get straight into it. I would be your facilitator for the first segment. We want to look at disaster management, preparedness, and response. The first presentation, Madam Secretary. So we want to go straight, take you straight to the first presentation. We're going to be talking a bit about being prepared. Right. So let's go. So what if? Next slide. What if things go wrong? Last week, or was it the week before? We were directly on a storm. I think that already named her Bonnie. And Bonnie was on a direct path for Trinidad and Tobago. So for all those who still speculated whether God has a diplomatic passport from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I think that event lay all those fears or concerns to rest, because without a doubt, a storm that was heading directly for Trinidad and Tobago, direct on path. The funnel was a dead center of Trinidad and Tobago. Couple hours before it makes landfall, it shifts, and according to the experts in the Hurricane Center, it shifted upward between the channel between Trinidad and Tobago and moved swiftly on its way. We give God thanks and praise, amen, because we understand the damages that can take place if and when a storm or other disaster hits us. Tonight we're going to talk about some other disasters, not only hurricanes. We are in the hurricane season, but we want to talk about some other. Next slide. So it's important for us to understand that modern disaster management is an ongoing national requirement important to governments and all of us alike. And it has some specific and special significance because of the increasing in the danger to the world environment. In order for it, what we do as a people, as governments, as communities, in order for us to do for what we do to be effective, it must be implemented. Disaster management must be implemented as a comprehensive and continuous activity, not as a periodic reaction. That's what we often do coming up to the hurricane season. We get all hyped up about being ready and doing some stuff, nailing down the galvanize, and after we out of the hurricane season, it's no problem until we reach somewhere around May again and we get all hyped up again. But it ought to be a continuous activity of being prepared. Consequently, national representatives who are charged with disaster management responsibilities have to deal with a range of policy, planning, organization, operational, and other matters. And this workshop, now you'll see NCM, that's Nazarene Compassionate Ministry. Yeah, that's I am the chair in Trinidad and Tobago of the group that has been put together by the Church of the Nazarene to ensure that if ever a disaster hit, NCMTT is a spin-off of our Caribbean Nazarene Compassionate Ministries, of which Dr. Rohan Harry heads. So in 2018, when the devastating floods hit the Bahamas, Dr. Harry would have asked me to travel to the Bahamas to do a ground assessment with the assessment team and to carry assistance. I'm putting this in immediately so that the wider community, those that are joining us, will understand that the Church of the Nazarene has committed itself to partner with governments across the region. When the volcano erupted in St. Vincent, Dr. Harry, who's been sanctioned, she and her husband, they would have been at the forefront of the relief efforts, together with ITNAC and Avenel Hector. So everything that Avenel Hector sent to St. Vincent didn't go through the government, it went through the Church of the Nazarene in St. Vincent. I'm saying that even as we partner in this initiative here with the Sandy Grande Development Foundation, another organization that is geared and is in the business of reaching out and helping people, of ensuring that needs are met. So we are here today because, next slide, we want for you to understand that our intention is to assist you as communities and groupings, mitigate against any instances, any disaster, whatever it may be, with day-to-day, long-term. And it's for us to draw on factual disaster management activities across the region and wider world, and endeavors to relate in a realistic way the needs of disaster managers, disaster coordinators, and you, the householder. So some of the things that we're going to look at today is to introduce you to the principles of emergency or disaster preparedness and response. 2, to explain and develop an understanding of the relevant strengths and potential roles of the local church, the churches and the communities, how important we are. I need to send that message, and I'm sending that message so that those who are not of the church will understand that the church has a role. The church is the place that you can go to, that you can rely on in the event of an incident happening. So we had some heavy rains last week, and one of our assessors, a young couple that will attend church, their house was affected by water, where the embankment came down. Within probably a couple hours of it, the rain subsided, and an assessment team was on the ground. Habitat for Humanity is at present analyzing their needs and how they can help them. Not the regional corporation, and this is me, I know we're putting down the regional corporation. The government and our local government, central government, need the assistance of communities if we are to get this right. If we have to help in times of need, the communities. And to this end, the Church of the Nazarene, we are presenting ourselves to the wider community all around the Caribbean. All those listening in the other regions, the same applies for your region. Want to highlight some types of disasters, emergencies, and the attendant dynamics along with some injuries. So we have brought in a fire service instructor, one of the paramedics, senior paramedics of the fire service, who will speak specifically. Why? And I see he was selected. Why? He is also a rescue technician. So he has been in water, rescuing over precipice. He has been in the forefront of disasters, rescuing. So he understands fully some of the injuries that we can encounter. And he wants to help us today to be able to identify them and to treat with them, or to know what to do or what not to do, and to explore networks that are available during a disaster. Yeah. Go back one. Yeah. Disaster and preparation for preparing has its basis in the Bible. And the word of the Lord came to Joseph as he sat second to Pharaoh. God said to him, let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming. God told Joseph, and Joseph would have shared that with Pharaoh. 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. That was a disaster. But preparation went into it. You saw something happen before, during the famine, and after the famine. Yeah? For food in the city, let them keep it. That food shall be reserved for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to befall the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through famine. Yeah, Jesus said in the Gospel of Luke chapter 12, be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. In other words, be ready for action, not react when something go wrong, but be ready for action. So disasters go through a particular cycle. Next slide. It goes through a cycle, so we need to understand that. Prevention and mitigation, preparation, planning, response, and recovery. Those are the cycles of any disaster and disaster management, taking care of a disaster. Yeah, we're going to talk about them in some more detail. What is the definition of a disaster? It is oftentimes misconstrued or confused for an emergency. But a disaster is a serious disruption to community life which threatens or causes death or injury in that community and damage to property which is beyond the day-to-day capacity of the prescribed statutory authorities. The regional corporation gets stretched and they need your cooperation and help, and which requires special mobilization and organization of resources other than those normally available to those authorities. Now, Avenel, Hector, Joseph, and Iknak has taken this to the next level. The last time Avenel had a press conference, Iknak is in the process of trying to buy a boat and a plane. Their own aircraft and seacraft. Why? Right now, if something happens, they have to depend on somebody to get goods anywhere. Iknak is saying we want to be self-sufficient. Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, Dr. Harry we had a workshop here in Trinidad with the leaders of the disaster management team of all the churches. Dr. Harry would have shared the mandate of the Church of the Nazarene is that within 72 hours, anywhere something takes place, we are able to be on the ground, ready to lend support during a disaster. An emergency, on the other hand, that is sometimes, next slide, it is sometimes often misconstrued, is an unforeseen combination of circumstances or the resultant state which poses a threat to health, life, property, or the environment that calls for immediate attention. So you need to recognize the difference between a disaster and an emergency. So there are emergencies that go on to become disasters. Next slide. There are many types of emergencies, man-made, natural and man-made, technological, as a result of conflict. So we saw ODPM sending out an advisory as residents of Beetham and Port of Spain and the surrounding areas started lighting fires, protesting. So ODPM, the department responsible for coordinating disaster relief efforts, sent out an advisory because somewhere in their mind they saw that conflict as a threat to the well-being of the society. So they put the citizens, apart from the police doing their part, they sent out an advisory putting people on alert. Yeah, so it can also be natural and seismic, speaking to earthquakes, climatic, talking about what happens and like during now the hurricane season, earthquakes, next slide, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and other celestial collisions, meteors, meteor showers and such like, climatic, high winds, precipitation, heavy rains, lightning storms, drought, floods, avalanche, soil erosions, all those come under, those are some types of natural disasters. Man-made disasters, technological, release of substances, transport issues on the roadways, structural failure, fire, explosions, environmental failure. On the conflict side, conventional war, Russia and Ukraine, yeah, that is a disaster taking place right now. We might just say it's war. It is a disaster. We're seeing now the effect of the war. Russia and Ukraine, look how far away they are from, so far up north. They're affecting us in food, they're affecting us in oil and fuel prices. It's affecting us. No, it's not just a threat. Yeah, remember I said an emergency poses a threat. Yeah, but in this case, the war in Russia has created an imbalance in the way things were. Yeah, armed civil war conflict, terrorism, unarmed conflict. In the event of a disaster, the response will be based on the type of, and of course, there are a number of bodies that have a responsibility. In our case as a church, NCM, Trinidad and Tobago, we have a network. So once a disaster is impending or something has happened, we have a district body who gets information from a zonal body who is fed from all the local churches. So we kick into action. The regional corporation has its list of counselors and regulators of the disaster management unit who interface and interact with communities. ODPM, you can go to the ODPM website and you can understand that ODPM as a central coordinated agencies, when something go wrong, fire service, the police service, the defense force, and all the other, a network of agencies come together to respond. We need to understand where do we fit in the response to disaster, because oftentimes we may either miss what we need to do, miss the help that is needed, or we can get ourselves in problems and being out of place with where we ought to be at a particular time. So there are some costs, next slide, associated with disasters: human costs, economic costs. Yeah, on the human side, there's deaths, injuries, loss. On the economic side, actual costs, intangible costs that you can't recover. Some other costs that are associated with disasters, medical costs. We recently had millions of dollars still being spent as a result of COVID-19 and its effect from all areas. Monies are still being spent. They don't check how much monies have been spent on COVID-19 relief, mitigation and relief. Sanitation issues, shelter and clothing, food, energy supplies, search and rescue, public works, environmental impact, logistics, transport. All these are attending costs when a disaster hits our country. That's why, as a church, joining together with the Sandy Grande Development Foundation, we saw it important to sensitize you, to come tonight, to give you an appreciation for what takes place and how you can. For those across in St. Vincent and the other islands, you just need to understand what is taking place in your island, in your neck of the woods. Yeah? So transformation, some of the opportunities, transformation through disaster. We transform the lives of people by mobilizing a disaster management network. Basically, that's what I want to share. That's what we're doing. we help to transform the lives of persons. One of the things we have done within the Church of the Nazarene, we have pulled together a group of counselors, grief counselors, so that if something happens, we are prepared on request to go into communities to provide grief counseling to families that have been affected by the effects of the disaster. Yeah. So of course, a disaster, when it hit, is an opportunity for us. For those of the church, I need you to understand that it's not something we just say, all right, yes, we stay in our house and pray, Father, let the storm pass. Father, we pray that all them people house. No, it's a time for us to roll up our sleeves and get into the community and help. And we did that. 2018, we got all dirty. Sunday after church, we went. I mean, people in La Saiva don't even come to church here, but we were all in La Saiva cleaning out filth. Amen. That's who we are. Went down in Grandy, where the prep school down by his Japs. You know, all down there. We drop off a team there. That's what we did. And we want to remind those of the church, those who may be listening tonight, if a disaster hits, peel your ears to the ground. We have our two coordinators, Brother Kern Dabro, Brother Sean Williams, our two coordinators. Brother Kern and Brother Sean are also the zonal coordinators. So not only are they our local coordinators, but they are also responsible for all the 11 churches in the entire East Zone. If something is going wrong, they are the go-to people that we would require to give us some feedback. Next slide. Skip over that. Skip over, right? So we just want to talk about disaster management as we bring this segment. So we just giving you some bits just so that you can get enough information to understand a bit about disaster management. So I said that the cycle of disaster management, next slide, comes into focus: prevention, mitigation, preparation, and planning. Yeah, and when we talk about prevention, next slide. Prevention and mitigation are regulatory and physical activities that reduces the effects of an emergency or disaster. I said you don't wait for something to go wrong. You deal with the flapping galvanize, right? The galvanize where the nails are out. You deal with that. If you are flood prone, you ensure that your drainage is taken care of. And it speaks to building codes. It talks about zoning. So in Trinidad, we don't really concern much about zoning. Yeah, we don't concern much about zoning because we build wherever. Yeah, we have a right to build. So we believe and we don't understand that when we build wherever, how we affect the order of things. Yeah? So some of the other things we do is risk assessments, public education. I'm not sure you hear it. ODPM sends out advisories, the regional corporation. This is the Church of the Nazarene, together with the Sandy Grande Development Foundation, saying to you, we want to educate you, understand your role, understand the things that you need to do. You need to take care. If you fill up the drains, of course flooding would be a problem. That's what we're saying to you. We're asking you to keep your surroundings clean. Next slide. Preparation are activities conducted or implemented before a disaster, incident action plan, training workshops like this, emergency exercise, warning system. So you recognize every time the storm comes, we go into yellow alert. So we went from yellow alert, we went into green alert, we went to orange alert, and subsequently we went into a storm what? Storm warning or storm watch? What did we go into? Storm warning. So with the storm warning, we understand that there is a possibility of the storm coming to your land or making landfall within a particular number of hours. Yeah, and then it goes into the storm watch. It did not reach storm watch. The storm warning was discontinued about 11:25 the night before it was due to hit at 2:05 the following morning. To God be the glory. Yeah. Some acquisition of emergency supplies, equipment. So the Church of the Nazarene, we recognize one of the problems we have when it have disasters is cleanup. So Nazarene Compassionate Ministries, we purchased 2 heavy-duty power washers that are available on request. You have to sign a little form now. Yeah. You had to sign a little form. Yeah? So we have to do that in order for you to get it, and it's available to each and every one. Next slide. Response. Activities that are operationalized during the disaster. Examples: emergency operations, search and rescue, activating emergency shelters, communication, evacuation, basic first aid and emergency care. These are things that happens real time. You may not be required to come real time. You are not first response. The fire service, the defense force, the other rescue agency, TEMA, yeah, and ODPM and the regional corporation, they are the ones who will be out in the communities doing some of these things. You need to understand what your role is. Then there is recovery. Next slide. You're going too fast. These are activities, right, that are necessary following a disaster. Cleanup and sanitation, I just talked about that. Temporary housing, rebuilding, restoration of utilities, processing of grants and claims, medical care and counseling. And we saw all of that taking place post the heavy rains of 2018. And of course, injuries during, after disasters. Instructor Horn will come on in a bit and he would share with you. I'm not going to go in, I'm just put it here to let you know some of the possible injuries and diseases which can occur. We're going to talk to you about that in a short while. Yeah. So a number of things, friends, because we wanted to give you a little bit of so much tonight, a number of issues that we can encounter before, during, and after. And it's not limited to understanding the type of disasters and emergencies, understanding the disaster management cycle, costs and responses associated with disasters, opportunities and the roles of the church, the community, the approaches that we must adopt to manage disasters or emergencies. And of course, as I said, we're going into that whole concept of injuries and diseases common in disaster emergencies. I want to pause here and ask if there are any questions at this point in time. Any questions? Those on the live stream, please look on the live stream if there are any questions. If no questions, I want to do something. We have here, joining with us, partnered with us, is the Sandy Grande Development Foundation. We have here with us Miss Magdalene Williams, its Vice President. The CEO and General Secretary, Ms. Kimmel Kerr, already did the welcome. Joining us today is, we have also Miss Liebert. She's here? She left? Ms. Liebert, a director. Joining us also is Mr. Eric Taylor, the president. I want to invite him at this time to come and give some remarks on this occasion of this partnership arrangement of Nazarene Holiness Center, Sandy Grande Development Foundation, presenting a disaster preparation, management and response workshop 2022. Welcome, Mr. Eric Taylor, president of the Sandy Grande Development Foundation, to bring some remarks at this time. All is great, sir. Yeah. Where's the live stream? Where the camera? Where the mic is there?
Good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
It's nice to be here. And to all the people who are joining us on the live stream, St. Vincent, wherever you are, I say good evening to you as well. It's really an honor and a privilege for the Sandy Grande Development Foundation to join hands with the Church of the Nazarene Northeastern Settlement in this instance. Huh? When you think about Nazarene, you think about Nazareth. And when
Nathaniel thought about Nazareth, as is recorded in, I don't want to say the wrong chapter, John chapter 1 and verse 46. He told Philip, well, Philip said to him first, we found the Messiah, here, come. And Nathaniel said, could any good thing come out of Nazareth? And Philip said, well, come on. So we came and we saw for ourselves the good things that are coming out of this church of the Nazarene. I think this church understands the role of a church. This church understands what the whole gospel is all about. There are some faith-based organizations that kill them dead. The gospel is about shabababati, all of that. This is gospel here. Because when flood take you, you won't hear no shabababa, You want help. We have a situation in the center in the Ranta Gardens there. A church, I'm not calling the name, but a church, they're using a room for service. And we encourage that because it's a good thing to praise and worship the Lord. So we ain't say no to that. But they are sharing the same room with some little children that play in pan. So when they come to set up church, it's little children. So they might leave a city paper here and a Tulum paper there and think, that is a disaster. They going all out to condemn the children. And what I get to realize, that particular church, they see steel pan as a devil thing. You see? You see where the walls does come? You see where the walls does come? And I am glad that this church has broken down all those walls. All those walls. And are willing to hold hands with civil society. In fact, there are some members you have here. They have dual citizenship. Huh? Because we in this together. Together. So my vice president is here, my CEO is here, Director Jordan is here. And one of our freshly minted directors is Dixie Ferreira is there. So we are happy to join hands with you because we came and we saw that you understood and you understand what it is to spread the good news here on behalf of the kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you, President Taylor of the Sandy Grande Development Foundation. And he could not have said it any better. We are in this together, and that's what we are presenting here tonight. So, when it was laid on my heart to reach out to him, to partner with us for this, collaboration, it is because I recognize that the Sandy Grande Development Foundation understands community, understands the importance of community, understands the message. They may not be faith-based, but they understand the message of the cross. They understand the message that Jesus would have presented in terms of what is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might. And the second, love your neighbor as yourself. We give God praise for this partnership with the Sandy Grande Development Foundation. As we move right on, Habitat, they're on. They're still there. We want to invite Sister Jennifer Messiah and her team from the Habitat for Humanity. It's also an organization that have partnered with the Church of the Nazarene, to go in and they would have done some collaborative work in the Sandy Grande area. I was called our president, our missions president, to bring some pictures to show two collaborative works, one on Road 4, right here in the settlement, and the other one is Walk Street. Walk Street in Sandy Grande, where Sandy Grande, where Habitat for Humanity partnered with the Church of the Nazarene Holiness Center to bring relief by way of building homes. As a matter of fact, it's not two, it's three. Two in the settlement and one in Walk Street. And we give God praise for joy. So we want to, they're going to talk a bit about the role of Habitat for Humanity. They're going to talk about their involvement as it relates to disasters and how they can help us in a community. And Habitat is all over the Caribbean. So let's welcome, I'm not sure who's going to lead off on their presentation. Are you hearing us? Habitat for Humanity, Sister Messiah? Yeah.
All
right.
afternoon, Joseph Charles is going to speak on
All
behalf
right. So your live, Sister Messiah.
I'm saying Joseph Charles is going to speak on behalf of Habitat. Only if he's having trouble, I will speak. Are you hearing me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Are you hearing Joseph? Can somebody tell me in the chat if Joseph is speaking? I'm not hearing him. Hello? Pastor Sampson, can you let me know what's happening? If not, I can go ahead and speak. Okay. Well, if you're hearing me, I see Mr. Earl is in the room. If something is wrong with his mic, I'll be happy to speak, but I will ask your kind consideration. I have a puppy that might be barking in the background. So Habitat for Humanity is a global NGO, and we are particularly interested in the shelter aspect of disasters. But because we are so concerned at the rate with which disasters are happening, we want to look at mitigation interventions. And so it's not just about responding with fixing your homes after it's damaged, but how could we build capacity in the communities in several ways? So we do a lot of construction technology training to enhance the skill set of persons in the community, teaching you how to build proper homes. So we can offer that to our community of Sandy Grande. We can also offer in the event of various events happening and hazards. We can offer different kinds of kits, shelter kits, cleaning kits, healthy housing kits, feminine care packages, and baby care packages. Those are some of the things we have, not in very large quantities, but certainly that we can respond if something happens in your community. We are not known for food distribution, but times in collaboration with Field, we were able to offer food supplies. But generally, as it relates to the partnership, the offer on the table is to build capacity, to strengthen your capacity as it relates to shelter, your house, your infrastructure, the resiliency of that, both from mitigation perspective as well as a response and recovery perspective. So we are available to give you assessments. Pastor would have alluded earlier to an incident happening this week, and the assessment team will send a link to you. You simply click on the link and you register the person sending the information. We see it in real time, and then we were able to see what kind of interventions we can assist with. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I will leave in case you want to ask any questions at this stage. Pastor, is there anything more you want me to say?
things that young firefighters do is look for an instructor to imitate. So he is one of the young men who tried that young firefighters do is look for an instructor to. All right, so we have some delay. So let me bring on instructor Horn all over to you. He's going to talk about medical emergencies. So let me bring on
Pleasant evening, everybody.
Go ahead.
My name is Earl Horn. I am an instructor attached to the Fire Service School.
Okay.
And it is my humble duty today to come and share some information with you all on first aid, the topic of first aid. My objective really is this evening to highlight the importance of first aid during disaster situations and to identify some of the injuries that are associated with disasters. So at the end of this program, you all will understand the importance of first aid. But what is first aid? Because first we must understand what is first aid to get into first aid. It is the immediate care given to victims who has injuries, whether it's minor or major, or that person has suddenly fallen ill. It is very important to understand, even during disaster situations, first aid do not replace the need for medical care. We still have to get persons to the hospital. So why it is important for you to know first aid? In our preparation for disaster situations, we must understand how to take care of persons who may have gotten some sort of injury or fallen sick, because we are likely to face those types of situations in disasters. So it's better to know first aid and not need it than to need first aid and not know it. So let us look at a short video on some supplies that you can have in our first aid kits. Because earlier, Pastor Sampson spoke about the before, during, and after phases. It is important during the before phases that we prepare ourselves and get in a state of readiness to deal with disasters. And one of the first things that we should practice in our preparedness phase is to get our supplies on hand. So when we are faced with emergency situations, we have the resources necessary to help us deal with those injuries. So the tips for the first aid kit. We have our first aid kit and we store it in the first aid kit, different things that we may need. Some gloves to make sure that we practice safety, BSI, body substance isolation, creating a barrier between ourselves and those who are sick or injured. Some gauze to cover up wounds, bandages, scissors, plasters, those kind of things you could get, have it in your first aid kit to keep it so that we can use it when the time comes. So you must have a first aid kit. Keep the first aid kit in your home and in your car, because we are staying in a position of readiness. So whether we are home or whether we are on our way from point A to point B, we have our first aid kit ready to help those who may be sick or injured. It is important within your first aid kit to check the expiry date of everything you have, because you don't want the items in your bag to become expired, and when it's time to use it, you are not prepared. You are giving persons things that may be expired. Have a list of all the emergency phone numbers. Number for the fire service, number for the police service, the emergency health service, your local health service in Trinidad and Tobago, it will be 811. For others who may be viewing from different parts, learn those numbers. Have the numbers for your regional corporation's disaster management unit, so that when something happens, you have your emergency numbers. We are preparing ourselves to deal with others and our families. So have a list of allergies for all family members in the event that they may become sick or they come into contact with something that causes an allergic reaction. And very important, store your first aid kit out of the reach of children, because you'll have things like scissors in your first aid kit and you don't want children playing with those things and end up getting injured, and now you have to deal with them also. So we are practicing safety with our first aid kits. So the principles of first aid. What we want to do with first aid is to preserve life, to prevent deterioration, and to promote recovery. To preserve life, we must ensure that persons have open airway, so that make sure the person is breathing properly, not breathing too fast, over 20 for the minute, or too slow, below 8. And we want to ensure that the person have good circulation, that blood is going throughout their body. So to prevent deterioration, if we find someone who is bleeding, we must first treat with bleeding. If we find someone who is in shock, and shock is a life-threatening condition that happens when the circulatory system in our body fails. This will be gone into more detail as we go further in and deeper into our first aid lectures. Today is only a superficial lecture just to get your appetite wet, to get you curious about first aid, have you wanting first aid, so that you're going to come back to receive that information on first aid and treat other injuries. All other injuries that you may find. Broken bones, somebody get punctured, simple lacerations or cuts, contusions. We want to deal with all those things to prevent the person from deteriorating or getting worse. And then we must promote recovery. When we talk about recovery, we are dealing with returning to a state of normalcy, returning that person back to a state of normalcy. So you want to reassure the person. Make sure you have the person's attention. Make sure they know what is going on, what you are doing every step of the way. We want to relieve pain in any way possible. If they have any medication, we don't want to give things to persons as first aiders because we are not sure how it will react. But we can, somebody get a sprained ankle, you could provide ice to help to relieve pain. Always handle the person with care. Take care of that person because you are responsible. You are the advocate for that person during disasters. So you're handling them with care. You're protecting them from all other harm, because if they are in a place, an environment that is injurious to their health or possibly could cause them their lives, you want to move that person from that environment to ensure that you protect them from harm. So when we are operating with the principles of first aid, we are taking into consideration that it's our responsibility before, during, and after disaster situations to preserve life. If the person has already been injured or they are sick, we want to prevent them from deteriorating, from getting worse, in order to promote recovery of getting that person back in a position that they were before. So in first aid, before you can operate, before you do anything with first aid, you are called upon, disaster strike, and you are called upon to operate. You have to ensure that you do a proper scene size up to understand what is around you, to understand what you are getting yourself into. So you must ask yourself the following questions. Are there any hazards? Because if there are hazards, you may want to remove the person, or if the hazard will cause problems for you, then you must wait for the formal responders to arrive. It makes no sense trying to help someone by putting yourself in danger and we move from having one casualty to 2 casualties. So do what is necessary. Ask yourself, what happened? Did this person fall? Did the person get shocked? Was the person struck? What happened? And then how many victims are there? How many casualties are there? Because you are gathering all this information to make a decision on how you can help, but also before you begin to help, you must call the emergency services. And you have the information, you told them what are the hazards, what happened, how many there are, to ensure that there is not a situation where we respond with less resources than is necessary. We want to respond with the appropriate resources. We look at health considerations. When we are doing first aid, we must maintain sanitary conditions. So we are controlling how we dispose our gloves and our dressing for persons who would have been injured, because we don't want to spread bacteria and lead to diseases being spread among the responders and the persons who are victims. So we're taking those waste products and we're putting them in plastic bags and we are tying off the plastic bags. If we don't have the orange plastic bags, the biohazard bags, then we must write on the plastic bags, labeling it as medical waste so that persons will understand this is not to be mixed up with other types of waste. Because we need to keep medical waste separate from other types of trash. Because medical waste must be and should be treated as hazardous material. Because during disaster situations, we don't want to exacerbate the problems by causing an outbreak of some sort of disease while dealing with persons who may be injured. And as best as possible, all human waste should be buried. So us first aiders, lay rescuers, when trying to purify wounds, it is better to be safe. Use purified water. Using other solutions, let that be the decision of the trained personnel. Those persons who come in with the ambulance. Let them decide to use other things. Because some of us, I know, like to use peroxide, for example. Very simple solution. Not understanding that peroxide is very corrosive. So we will take the precaution by cleaning wounds with purified water, with clean water. We must ensure that we create a barrier between ourselves and those who are affected. Why? Because we don't want the transfer of anything. So when I use gloves and goggles, face masks, every time we do first aid, to ensure that we create that barrier between those victims and ourselves. Because that victim is in, or that casualty is in a vulnerable position, and we may not be altogether well. You may have the cold, and you transfer that to the person while helping them, thinking that you are doing good, but you cause the person to deteriorate. And we talk about preventing deterioration earlier. So we don't cover all wounds. Once persons have open wounds, we are covering wounds, because a wound is an abnormal break in the continuity of the skin and the tissues, allowing blood and other fluid to exit. That blood and other fluid could be carrying bacteria that could cause diseases to spread. But that abnormal break is also allowing bacteria from the outside to get into the person. We don't want to spread disease in either way. Potable water, drinkable water, is oftentimes in a disaster situation in short supply, or it's unavailable. So we're going to make sure we have clean water for drinking, cooking, and especially doing our first aid activities. So we could purify water by heating it once that facility is available, or we purchase purifying tablets before as part of our preparation. Or if we can find unscented bleach, we can use that in small amounts to purify water to continue our first aid operations. So we get that out of the way, understand the principle, what first aid is about, and what we want to do. We want to maintain sanitary conditions. Why? Because we may encounter bleeding, because persons may have gotten punctured, lacerations, they may slip and fall. So you have bleeding. So we must be able to identify the different types of bleeding, because there's external bleeding and internal bleeding. And those bleeding could happen because of bleeding from your capillaries, which is described as oozing blood, moves very slowly. Venous bleeding, or bleeding from your veins where the blood is flowing. Or arterial bleeding, where the bleeding comes from the artery that you'll see it squirting out. So as first aiders, we must understand what type of bleeding it is. But no matter what type of bleeding it is, our goal as first aiders is to ensure that we control that bleeding, because we want to prevent deterioration. We want to promote recovery. We want to save lives. So how are we going about dealing with external bleeding? Abnormal break in the continuity of the skin or tissues allowing blood to exit. We must firstly protect ourselves, because we are doing that all the time. Remember the term BSI, body substance isolation. We are creating a barrier between ourselves and the persons that we are helping, because we don't want the transfer of bacteria or even diseases. So we're protecting ourselves. Then we're going to use manual control by applying direct pressure to that wound. If where the wound is, it is covered with clothing, we must cut away the clothing to expose the area so we can see exactly what we are dealing with, to find the actual source of the bleeding. If we have sterile pads, or clean cloth, we apply that directly with our gloved hand. If we have bleeding in the extremities, referring to the arms or the legs, we must elevate the arm or the leg above the level of the heart to try to slow blood pumping to that area while applying direct pressure. And as we come back and we go further into first aid, as we prepare for disasters, we're going to go even deeper in understanding how we arrest bleeding. But for today, time is short. Internal bleeding. As first aiders, there is not much we can do but identify internal bleeding and get that person to the hospital very quickly, because that's beyond our scope to deal with. So in internal bleeding, the skin may not be broken. Blood is not seen. It is difficult to detect if we don't know what we are looking for. But that internal bleeding could be life-threatening, because the person is bleeding out inside. And once you are losing blood, there's a possibility that you could go into hypovolemic shock. So what to look for as a first aider? We're looking for swelling on the extremities, the arms and the leg, in case there was trauma or impact to the arms or the legs. Contusion, that breaking of the skin. Painful, rigid or tender abdomen. So if you feel the abdomen and it have that kind of board-like rigidity, we know that there's a possibility that the person is bleeding on the inside. Or if you have rebound tenderness, where you apply pressure to the abdomen and your fingers leave that mark in the abdomen, we know that there's a possibility of internal bleeding. Obviously, if someone is vomiting or coughing up blood, we know for sure that that person is bleeding internally. If there is black stool or bright red blood in the stool, that is an indication of internal bleeding. Because if you experience or you are helping someone who told you that the stool is very dark, that indicates some sort of problem in the upper gastrointestinal tract. So somewhere in the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestines, it have bleeding inside there. Black stool is an indicator. With bright red blood, then we have to look to see if there is some problem with the rectum or the colon to get that type of bleeding. And let us move on to fractures. So we look at bleeding. In disaster situations, persons could get fractures. You could have open fractures or closed fractures. Open fractures where the bone has pierced the skin and is now outside of the skin. Or it's closed fracture, it is broken but it's inside. So let us look at that quickly.
A break or crack in a bone is called a fracture. A broken bone that does not puncture the skin is called a closed fracture. But sometimes a bone can puncture the skin. This is called an open fracture. Even if you can't see any blood, the break will have caused some internal bleeding, and the injured person may develop shock. Bones that are still growing, like children's bones, are supple and can split, crack, or bend quite easily, a bit like a twig, but the injury is still very painful. If you think someone has a fracture, you may see swelling and bruising. They may have difficulty moving and have movement in an unnatural direction. The limb may look shorter, twisted, or bent. There may be a grating noise or feeling if the limb is moved, have loss of strength, or see signs of shock. If you think you've broken a bone, support the injured part to stop it from moving. This should help ease the pain and prevent any further damage. Place padding around the injury for extra support. If it's an open fracture, cover the wound with a sterile dressing and secure it with a bandage. Apply pressure around the wound and not over the protruding bone to control any bleeding. Call 999 or 112 for emergency help. While you're waiting for help to arrive, don't move the casualty unless they're in immediate danger. Support the injured area. For example, fractures on the arm can be secured against the body with a sling. Fracture to the leg can be secured to the uninjured leg with a triangular bandage. Keep checking the person for signs of shock, but do not raise an injured leg. If necessary, raise the uninjured leg. If they become unresponsive at any point, prepare to treat an unresponsive casualty. So remember, pad and support the injured area. Use a sling or triangular bandage to keep it secure. Cover any wounds. Call 999 or 112. And that's how you treat someone with a fracture. If this video has been helpful to you, help support St. John Ambulance by going.
So let's also quickly at electrical shock. If someone encounters electrical shock during a disaster situation, they may get burned, or the electricity will leave no mark on the skin. Either way, that electricity passing through that person's body will cause damage on the inside. Even the smallest amount of electricity can be fatal because it could send the person into cardiac arrest. So when you come back to do more of first aid, we're going to go into things like cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So if someone has gotten electrical shock, don't touch the person if they're still in contact with electrical current. Call the local emergency numbers. Call for in Trinidad, you're calling the fire service, you're calling Tiantec. If the person has been in contact with any type of high voltage lines. You, the first aider, must not get near any high voltage wires until the power is turned off. So you're waiting until the electricity company gives you that all clear. Yes, there is no electricity. Treat all live, all down wires as live. So don't move any person with electrical injuries unless they are in immediate danger. Once the scene is safe, leave them where they are. Because they want to turn off the electricity if possible. If it happens in a home, you could isolate the breaker, no problem. If not, leave it alone. If you really have to move the electrical wire, use some sort of material that is an insulator of electricity, not a conductor, to get it away from you or the injured person. And begin CPR if the person is not breathing or has no circulation. And we'll go into CPR as we go deeper into first aid. So prevent the person from being chilled. Keep them warm. If the person experiences any burns because of the current passing through their body, use sterile gauze or bandage or clean cloth. So do not use any blanket with all those furs and the fibers on it that will get stuck inside of the burns and cause infection, because we don't want to cause the person to deteriorate. That's why you look at the psychological part of first aid, because we could look at the sickness and the injuries, but it's important to also look at the psychological component of first aid in disaster situations. Because when we look at psychological first aid, it deals with human resilience. Because persons will experience stress during disaster situations because they would have been exposed to some traumatic event. And this could affect any and everybody: children, adolescents, elderly, families, entire communities. We want to be ready to provide psychological first aid, because we look for the signs. People may be confused. They have fear, feeling of hopelessness and helplessness, sleeping problems, physical pain, anxiety. They will have anger, grief, shock, aggressiveness, withdrawal, guilt, shaken religious faith, because they ask him, why would God do this to me? You have to be ready for persons reacting like that. Loss of confidence in themselves or others. You have to be ready for that, to provide that type of first aid. How are we going to do that? You create an environment of safety. Allow those persons to feel safe, to feel calm and comfortable, because they keep talking to them, reassuring them. Because we promote recovery. You gain them that connectedness, because some may withdraw. Let them feel connected. Self-empowerment, that they can get up and continue to do things. Hope. There's a better tomorrow. The disaster happened today. We are moving forward. Better tomorrow. And that is where we will stop, and I will entertain any questions that you all may have. Thank you very much. Any questions?
He's not here in secretary. See, he's not here. He said it already. Some of the things, some of the bandages. So he's not here in secretary. See, he's not here. He said it already. Some of the things, some of the bandages. So he's not here in secretary. See, he's not here. He said it already. Some of the things. Secretary, see, he's not here. He said it already. Some of the.
Are you hearing me?
So we apologize to our viewers tonight. The technology not working with us tonight. That's all right. We trust in God. We'll work it out. And that we trust God that you have heard pertinent information, your first aid kits, having your bandages, having things that you required based on what you have at home. There are some, especially as it relates to disasters, having various types of pads and gauze and cleaning agents. You'd have spoken about cleaning agents, things that you would need to clean wounds and understanding what has to be done. I also had a question for him for the benefit of some persons. How soon after the person, you suspect the person has been electrocuted, you start CPR? I was wondering if anybody would have asked. It's a common question. He's not here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a question for the benefit of everybody. How soon you suspect someone has been electrocuted and you talk about starting CPR? How soon after?
Well, the first thing we have to do is to ensure that the scene is safe. There is no possibility of getting electrocuted. Once the scene is safe, you do assessment, you realize the person is not breathing, there is no circulation, you start. Once the scene is safe, you do assessment, you realize the person is not breathing, there is no circulation, you start. Once the scene is safe, you do assessment, you realize immediately. Breathing, there is no circulation, you start. Once the scene is safe, you do assessment, you realize immediately. Breathing, there is no circulation, you start. Once the scene is safe, you do assessment, you realize immediately. Breathing, there is no circulation, you start. Once the scene is safe, you assessment, you realize immediately. Breathing, there is no circulation.
This wasn't Ricky. I'm not sure what's happening. It just being repeated. So Earl, if I'm hearing you right, once the scene is safe, yeah, you all heard it. Yeah, it was repeated like about. We know what we say about when the word of God things are repeated. Pay attention. Yeah, you don't start it until you believe the scene is safe. Yeah, so the risk of you immediately. All right, so we'll pause. I'm not sure what is happening. So Earl, we want to say, in the interest of time, we want to say one more question before. So Earl, we'll invite you back. So there's a first aid course coming later on in August. There is also, he touched on the last topic he touched on, Nazarene Compassionate Ministries will be hosting psychological first aid. We need more people to understand that whole concept of treating with the psychological side of disasters. So we're also going to be having later on in the year, September, October, a course on psychological first aid. There are group rates. It is being hosted by Dr. Gregson Francis and his team. Dr. Gregson Francis is a psychologist, a therapist in his offices in Chaguanas. He's also one of the elders of the Church of the Nazarene, and they are presenting psychological first aid a little later on. We have had, unfortunately, because of the numbers of persons that have registered so far, I did not have enough that I can say to the national school, I have enough to go on. So I have had to now postpone the first aid course that was due for Saturday to a later date to be announced. Yeah. So Earl, on behalf of Nazarene Holiness Center, Sandy Granny Development Foundation, we say thank you. You had one more question, Sister Mary. We'll have one more question for you.
Yes, sir, I am here.
Is it here? Secretary is here? I'm not seeing. All right. So Earl, if you're hearing us, question, go ahead.
I heard you said that peroxide is corrosive. Peroxide is a thing that I don't do without in my medicine cabinet.
I don't mean it corrosive.
And it works for me. It works for me. I use it on from mosquito bite, go right back. And when you say it is corrosive, what do you mean? Is it that it would spoil in the cabinet, or if I put it on me, it will rust? What's going on?
So earlier heard the question, and earlier I want you to be careful in answering it because it's my wife asking you the question. And over the years, she have made me not so much fall in love with peroxide, but I use it too. So I want you to be careful in answering. Go ahead.
I am always careful. The when I say it is corrosive, it means if you use it on open wounds, it strips away flesh. That is what it means by being corrosive. Because even persons who use um, peroxide to gargle it, it
We
strips
hear
away
it,
the
those on the
enamel and
live
it
hearing it, but we don't know for what reason it's not hearing it. Yeah.
not hearing.
Put it there. Put the mic by it. Put the mic by it. Ask Earl, could you repeat it? Because we're having some technical difficulties. But those on the live, we are hearing it. Ask Earl, could you repeat it? Because we
Yes, sir.
but those on the live, we are hearing it. Ask Earl, could you repeat it? Because yes, sir.
When I say that corrosive, peroxide is corrosive, I mean if you
Why
apply
please
it to
repeat
open
it?
wounds, it strips away flesh. That is what makes it corrosive. Because persons use peroxide for whitening their teeth. Because some people gargle it and it strips away the enamel to keep their teeth looking white. So when you put it on open wounds flesh, it eats away at the flesh. And with consistent use, it could get that wound to open up larger than it actually was at the beginning. So using it on mosquito bites and that kind of stuff, no problem, because it's not an actual open wound. But be careful when you are using it on an open wound. I'm not hearing, sir. I'm not hearing that anything.
We will go get Mike. You can invite, you can give our electrical grid, they can now de-energize, as we saw in the nationwide blackout. We can now de-energize with a switch. We need to go on no pole and disconnect. We can de-energize our country with switches. Yeah. So connection lines. Next slide. If your property or the line coming to your home has been damaged by storm, yeah, before you do anything, you need verification of your panel box, your wiring, your equipment. Don't just use a blow dryer and blow it out and put it back on. You need verification from a professional to ensure all the circuits, that there is moisture trapped within the contacts of the breakers within your electrical system. And that is only done by a licensed electrician. And here in Trinidad and Tobago, for those in other areas, other jurisdiction, it might be somebody else. But here in Trinidad, it's Tech. Yeah. Next slide. After the storm, we need to clean up again. Listening to advisories is important. You need to report fallen, low, damaged power lines to the local electricity distribution and stay away from them. Stay away from electrical signs, street lights, cables, any kind of foil insulation or other conductive material that may be lying around your house. Part of your preparation is to secure those things. Stay away. Don't touch panel boxes if they are damaged by water, fire, or if lightning is close, and warn others to do the same. You'd recognize if your house is involved in a fire, Tech will get there. One of the things they do oftentimes, based on the nature of the fire, is remove your current, because the fire at times disrupt the circuitry, disrupt your wiring. Yeah, so it's important to understand and to cooperate with the authorities. Do not do your own electrical work. It is both illegal and dangerous. Always use a licensed electrician, and I can tell you about that. We had an experience quite recently. We utilized somebody who knows a little bit about electricity, and I was waiting on an electrician to come do some work, but I needed to get something done, and I used somebody who said he knew. Now I knew I was taking a risk, and you will think, well, why would a fire officer do something like that? I was convinced because I wanted the work done. When the licensed electrician came and I was testing some lights, I recognized the person who was there before made a connection that, how was it, Sister Mary? When I turned on, there were two switches. One was for outside, one was for inside. Both of them was turning on, the two of them at the same time. But thank God, as I said, the electrician came and he identified it one time. He said, hey, Mr. Sampson, something wrong here. Yeah? Immediately, use a licensed electrician. Yeah? But we don't do much solar lighting. Solar lighting should be the thing of the future. Has not grown popular in Trinidad. Don't know why. But solar light generates electrical power also. Yeah? After the storm, as we clean up, if there's asbestos, make sure you know how to clean up asbestos. It's dangerous. It's not so much electrical, but most times your electrical wiring is either attached if your house still has asbestos. So you have a double danger. The asbestos that is toxic, that is carcinogenous, being cancer forming, and at the same time, the electrical wires. Unplug all your appliances that have been affected by water, have them inspected. Do not operate electrical appliances while standing in the water. You hear the advertisement. What the man name? The lady that's with a kind of voice. I forget the name. What your name? Storm? I can't remember his name, but the lady said, don't do that. I can't remember the name, but you know the advertisement. Yeah? So don't pull out, you hear her telling him, don't pull out the plug with your wet hands. Yourself, you know. Have a license, and I can't overemphasize that, especially that your house have been inundated with water, flood waters. After it's subsided, get an electrician, professional to come in and check to see the extent. You might just look around and say, hey, everything looking good. But we have seen in Greenvale, water was head height. So all these plugs, you know, so you can't look and say, well, yeah, it's good, and plug back in. You need to remove and ensure that everything inspected and proper before going on. Take extra care around your panel box, especially if it's outdoors. Wear appropriate clothing going around it. If you are in doubt about it, stay away. Next slide. Quickly, damaged electrical appliances can cause electrical shock using appliances and equipment and fires. Yeah, dispose of or have licensed electricians repair water. T&Tech not giving you back anything if flood full your house and your electrical, your fridge, your stove get damaged. You might get, they still get something from the regional, the social development. They might give you a little voucher to get something by courts. But dispose of it, yeah, and have a licensed electrician inspect all hardwired appliances such as air conditioning units, stoves that you intend to reuse. The safety check may be required before the power supply can be safely restored. Winds. One of the things that accompany storms, strong winds. Strong winds down power lines cause debris to fly, cause trees and other stuff to go flying, damaging both poles and lines. Yeah, if they are lying on the ground, they are dangerous. You should not touch that. That cannot be overemphasized. Only T&Tech should be dealing with those lines on the outside. Of course, understand the human body is an excellent conductor of electricity. So if you come across anything, any kind of damaged power lines, report them. Don't drive over them. Don't touch them or attempt to move them, especially if they're close to water. If someone has been electrocuted by a power line. Let me tell you how dangerous that is. We have two firefighters, one in Sandy Grande, one in Mova. House fires. They in the process of fighting fire. There were down lines. We can't wait all the time for T&Tech to come to de-energize. We have to get about the business of putting out the fire. And this young man, in the process of doing that line is down. And in the process, his parts of his body got exposed and made contact, not with the line, but parts of the house that was touching the line. He didn't even touch the line. Both of them, same instance. Similar to the young man, they have been out. One of them, the guy in Sandy Grande, has not yet returned to work. That's well over 5 years now. One in Mova, same thing. They're still not working, having been affected. It's serious, people. And I needed to get this in. Sometimes we take it for granted. We try to do things ourselves, but it can cause some damage. Portable generators, there are guidelines for them. When you buy them, they will tell you, connect it to house wiring using the appropriate switches. Never power your house by plugging generator straight into a wall outlet, because it affects some of what T&Tech has built in. It will bypass your breakers. Yeah, if you do that, do not connect your generator to your house using a power point on any circuit or any other connection point that will cause feedback. Any connection point into the house. Yeah. So again, people come a connection point from your mains to your house. Never connect your generator to your connection point. Yeah. Ensure all the leads used to connect your generator in good working order, is rated, is free of any abrasion, has all 3 pins attached to them. Yeah, so there's some more portable generator. Next one. Go ahead. Right. Keep the generator outside. Never use it indoors. Run the generator outdoors, and generators work pretty good. When we were in the Bahamas, we used to put on the generator. That's all they had. Power didn't come up for a while. So that generator would be put on about 10 o'clock in the night, and somewhere around 4:30, you knew it ran out of gas because the air conditioner were cut off. So you used to get it, you used to run the air conditioner as always. You use it to run just to keep the mosquitoes away and to keep the place cool. Yeah. carbon monoxide alarm if the generator has to be close to your house. That is what it will produce. Carbon monoxide causes anoxia. Anoxia knocks you out in your sleep. It kills you. You don't know you're dead. Everybody else know you're dead but you. That's what anoxia does. That's what carbon monoxide does. It's a silent killer. Yeah. So you keep the generator dry. Do not use it in rainy conditions. Make sure your hands are always dry when using your generators. Some of the things quickly we looked at, that electrical safety is important during storm condition. Please remember, severe natural disasters come with a variety of potential electrical safety hazards. Everyone knows everything about buying food, buying cricks, buying water, but a lot of people ignore potential safety hazards and what to do or what not to do as it relates to approaching electrical damages. It is important to know what to do if your appliances and equipment become submerged in water. Electrical safety friends, before, during, and after the storm, your choices make the difference. Any questions? Comment? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. Taylor, let me say, so for those watching the live, Mr. Taylor, president of the Sandy Grande Development Foundation, he is suggesting that this particular electrical safety tips module should be done again. I say to you, for everybody to hear, hold me to it, you set it up, you invite me, and we come to it. You don't have to be here. You could either bring the people here, or I could come to wherever you assemble them. Yeah, we in this together, and the intention is for us to work together, sensitize, make people become aware, because we are oblivious to some of the things that we do that we think is normal. We are oblivious of how dangerous it is until it affects us, and then we say, well, I didn't know that. Yeah, so we are in the business of making people know. That's who we are as Christians, making known the gospel of Jesus Christ. But as you rightfully said, we cater to the whole man, every aspect of our community. So we want them to be safe during a storm. We are in the hurricane season. Not only hurricanes, there's a module on earthquakes I haven't touched. Earthquakes brings with it a whole different component of behavior. Haven't touched it. So, Mr. Taylor, you and your foundation, bring people together. We'll talk to them. Yeah, that's what we are. I could get Mr. Horn to come back and talk some more on injuries and first aid, and I could talk some more on electrical safety tips. Question here. Any questions on the line? Yeah. Right. So good question. Generators are used when power is out. It's still rainy. It's still overcast. The conditions where you put it, you will have to secure it to ensure what they're saying. If you have it, you're using it. It's outdoors, and you have to touch it. You have to interact with it. You want to safeguard yourself because it is now using mechanical energy to generate electrical energy. Yeah, so that is what leaving your generator. Pull out your plug. That's just a mechanical engine. Yeah, but as it starts and it goes through the operator, it generates, just as the name implies, generates energy that goes to breakers and switches that you can now attach a plug to and identify. So with generators, you don't try, and they advise, you don't try to plug it in your breaker to serve your whole house. Yeah, and stuff like that. You identify the appliances you're going to serve. So you might decide what is important during the storm. Cold food, fridge, a radio, not TV, we watch Netflix. You're going to decide what is important, and you have an appropriate strip same rating as what comes from the generator, and you attach those to it. It might even mean you have to pull the fridge in the bedroom if you think that is what, because you want cool, you want a cool drink now, and at the same time you want the fan once you rest at night. Yeah. So you decide and you plug it in, not to the breaker, not to the house, but to appliances. Yeah. So the appliances that you identify are necessary. Right? It's only when you reach and you have, no, those are the home generators. Yeah? You have big generator like what them establishment have, current load, which they are mandated by law to have from a safety standpoint. Yeah, the Hush Act requires that. So it comes on immediately. Immediately, TNTech power goes 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. It's supposed to come on by 3, 1,000. It's supposed to keep in. Yeah? So, I mean, it's there. Yeah? But that's outside it. Home in the house, you want to go outside. You want to check and see if it might have to a switch, a press button, or a crank. Yeah? But I'm a crank it. And then it goes with the switch, the press button, we can also crank. Any questions on the line? Any more questions? Any more comments? So, ladies and gentlemen, we went over by 15 minutes. We promised you 8:30. We like to be a church that sticks, so do what it says and it says what we do. But unfortunately, we had some technical issues tonight. So Taylor, thank you for suggesting we do it over. We do some of the modules, if not everything, some of the modules I look forward to it. Put all your hands together for all the facilitators tonight for this workshop session. Let me invite our coordinator for the East Zone and for Nancy Holiness Center, Sean, come and give a vote of thanks as we close this broadcast, this workshop.
Good night, everyone. Good night. I greet you all wonderful Lord's name. It's until I feel holding on your life to the other picture.
Listen. Don't be frightened the camera. Let everybody hear I'm speaking into the atmosphere. So everybody can hear, everybody witness now.
This is the second time we came in this establishment. Yes. And it started off the first time with the completion of 14s. Yes. Right? Yes. And you come tonight and you're talking about Nazareth. Yeah. Be careful. You have a waxy ears before you know what. I think God forbid that tonight. Yeah. And I'm glad that you have some knowledge of the word. Yes. So, on behalf of Nazareth, we decided to thank all the presentators, those who presented themselves first. Because I know it's taken out of your time to come to really get some knowledge firsthand. I want to thank Pastor Sampson for orchestrating this, you and Mr. Taylor for coming together, collaborating to bring this knowledge for us so we can have first-hand effectiveness. And that is the key to having an effective community. And that is what we want to be as a church. And I like what he said. He said that we are a church that is effective. We didn't just showing our face and opening a door and accepting people to come in. We are effective and we want to affect lives. And and in case of an emergency, this is a calling. We here at National Holiness Center, we want you all to know that we are able to facilitate you by the grace of God. We will be able to do everything. And with the collaboration of Sangrani Corporation, we will be here to help. So we just want to say thanks on behalf of NFC and the whole Nazarene body on a whole, because we are not representing ourselves. You understand? We are all members of the body of Christ, and we just want to say thank you all for presenting yourself to be edified, because that is another one of our roles, to make sure that each and every one is edified, both spiritually, holistically, and just natural growth. That is what we're about. As a church, as a people, as individuals. So we just want to say thank you all for coming out tonight and presenting all yourself to be adequately educated so you can be effective. And remember that word going forward in this rainy season. Effectiveness. Right? So I say thank you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you to our disaster coordinator for NHC and Church of the Nazarene East Zone. So we have come to the end. And we just want to pray as we leave here. So let me ask you to stand those that are here. Really want to say thanks to Sister Jennifer Messiah, Habitat for Humanity, and all the others. Yeah. Church, we invited him in person. We want to be live. You have information that the people need to hear. And we're going to do this again. Amen. Somebody say amen. Amen. We're going to do this again. We're going to make it happen. We're going to let the want to let the people know that we care. And that we need to say that I always say love is our action, word is our verb. Yeah, do the thing, don't say it. Yeah, show it. You know, one of the favorite saying, preach the gospel, preach the gospel, preach the gospel. Like if at all possible, use words. Yeah. So when Mr. Taylor said that, one of our great theologians would have shared that sometimes our preaching of the gospel has nothing to do with just standing and saying, thus said the Lord, but demonstrating what God has said. Amen. So again, thanks to you, Mr. Taylor, and your Vice President, Williams, your CEO, General Secretary, and all the other directors. So the faithful, the leaders of the Nazarene Holy Center, to those that logged on tonight, those who facilitated or took part through, those who will look at the street tomorrow and who will look at it next week. And whenever you will log on and look at it, we say, thank you. We pray that the information will have impacted your life. And if you have more, remember, first aid course is going to be coming up. It's going to be scheduled. And we need a certain number. I need at least 10. I didn't even get 10. I need at least 10 persons. I can do 8. Amen. The certificates are not Trinidad based. Yeah, and I need at least 10. I will do 8 to make it happen. Yeah, and of course, as I said, that's my course. That course is that is not because of the program. That's my course. Yeah, it's more than that. 400. That's me. That's not even Nazarene. That's the Samson's course. The facilitator gives it at that for that. And $100 was just for me to give a gift to the facilitator for the program, for those who don't want to facilitate, just to say thank you to him. Yeah, nothing, no part of that staying with the church. Everything going to the facilitator, it's going to the international body, there's a local representative who will supply your first aid manual, you get a manual, plus your certificate and your first aid card that is valid for 2 years. That's what you get with the first aid course. Yeah, as I said, the instructor who I was bringing is amongst the best and the brightest, not just here in Trinidad, he also operates all of the United States. So just bow your head tonight. Let me just invite one of the leaders to come and pray. Sister Nixie, just come and close us in prayer. 2 years, as I said, newly minted director and leader of NHC. Do you want to roll and close us as we
Father, as we join with the Center Development Corporation as we center, we pray, oh God, that everything that we do today, oh God, will go out to the people in the community and worldwide them, and it will impact them in a way that it will change their lives. Father, we just want to thank you for all that attended here tonight, and we pray that we carry them home safely.
Amen. God bless you.